And continuing to bring you all the action live from the Mandalay Bay, Sara Perlman with Steve Melewski, Orioles beat writer for our very own MASNsports.com. What's going on, Steve?
It's all happening here, I think, Sarah, over the next few days. Pretty busy here in Las Vegas. It's kind of exciting. The winter meetings are here again, and all of baseball has congregated in a wonderful city.
You know, I love the first day, truly, of winter meetings. You get to speculate everything that could happen, that should happen, and that might happen right here in Las Vegas in front of our very own eyes.
Exactly, and of course the former Oriole, Manny Machado, is very much in the news, and a potentially former National, and Bryce Harper, we don't know how that's going to go, but I mean, these two guys, I mean, they have a chance to break the record of $325 million held by Giancarlo Stanton. That's kind of crazy money, but some dollars will be thrown around over the next few days, weeks, and months at that duo.
Insane to think about, but it's a big question. A lot of people are wondering, when will those two players find new homes for lots of money? Steve, we got to talk about Mike Elias. We haven't had much time to discuss the hiring of Mike Elias from the Orioles. I think it's a great move, but he has had his hands quite full. There's still no manager for the Orioles, and he said that's first and foremost on the to-do list for his position right now.
Well, I think right now Mike Elias is multitasking.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot on his plate. It's kind of interesting here at the meetings when so much focus for so many teams is on player acquisition, roster moves. And for the Orioles, that's kind of secondary right now because really he's still building his front office. He's still building his top cabinet, if you will, his top lieutenants. As we're going to eventually find out who they are. We know Sig Mejdal, of course, is there with analytics. And he's hiring a manager. It sounds like they have completed most, if not all, of their interviews, so they're probably pretty well down the road on that. I don't know if we're going to get any manager announcements here in Las Vegas. That would be exciting, but it shouldn't be too much long after that we'll know who's going to manage the Orioles in 2019.
It's such a different feel compared to last year. You hire a guy like Sig Mejdal, and I'm happy you're here to talk about it. This is someone that worked for NASA. He's brilliant. He got into baseball, and you know he's been really successful with analytics. How important is that for the Orioles moving forward during this rebuild and beyond?
You know, it's interesting, Sarah, because the Orioles had an analytics department in past years, but it doesn't seem, for whatever reason, and I don't know the reason, that a lot of it made its way to the clubhouse. And I mean, that I think disappointed some fans when they read comments like we saw from Zach Britton, Brad Brock, and Kevin Gausman when they went to other teams and talked about this whole new world opening up to them. That's a little disappointing, I think, if you're an Oriole fan, to hear that your team wasn't up to speed with other teams. So when you bring in people from the Astros, they are the best team. they're the trendsetter. They are ahead of the pack. So with Elias and Mejdal, and the people they'll bring in. I mean, the Orioles not only will catch up with the rest of baseball, but maybe they will move towards the head of the field, which I think is exciting because analytics, sabermetrics, data-driven decisions is what's happening in the sport right now. We're not going backwards. It's like adapt or die. Get on board with what's happening, or you're just going to get lapped by the field. So the Orioles needed this. I think it's tremendous for the Baltimore Orioles. I think they're going to be doing some amazing things, and some of the few players we've heard react to this, they want it. They're excited about it.
A few managerial candidates we must go over that the Orioles have reportedly been interviewing. One stands out in particular, Pedro Grifol. He's bilingual, been with the Royals, a really good organization for a long time. What's your thought on him and if he'd be a good fit for this rebuilding team?
You know, I do know some people who know him well because he is a Florida State graduate. I used to work at Florida State.
We know it.
Sorry to throw that in on a Gator over here. I am in the doghouse for days doing that. But this guy plays to rave reviews for people who know him. As you said, bilingual. He relates well to players. He's an incredibly shrewd, intelligent, ahead of the game guy. I mean, he worked with Kansas City. You know, he worked with some of their catchers there. And, of course, Salvador Perez, one of the best catchers in the game. He had a lot to do with that. So this is an exciting guy. It's a good list of candidates the Orioles have, and we don't know how they're ranking in Mike Elias's mind right now or who's rising to the top, but he's a pretty exciting guy.
A guy that also stands out is Mike Bell. He comes from a baseball family. His dad, his brother was recently hired as a manager, coming from the Diamondbacks. What do you think about Mike Bell? Could he be a good fit for this team?
His reputation for player development is impeccable.
And that's crucial right now.
I mean, not only did they send a lot of players to the major leagues from his system, but the teams won. So, I mean, they won and they developed players. If you're in the minor leagues, that's a great twofer. You know, you want to develop players, that's job one. But if your teams can win too, you learn more when you win. You know, things are exciting. You're in the pennant race longer. So this guy's got a great background, third generation. I mean, his grandfather, Gus Bell, played in the major leagues. His father, Buddy Bell, played and managed in the major leagues. His brother is the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. So, I mean, this is a background filled with baseball. And so it's an exciting candidate. And, I mean, you know, if you're going, the Orioles player development is going to be so critical moving forward, as Mike Elias says, building that elite talent pipeline. And here's a guy who built a pretty elite talent pipeline in Arizona.
It's so crucial to find a manager, of course, in the next few weeks. It might not happen at Vegas, but what a time for Mike Elias to be here and get to meet with representatives from all of Major League Baseball and do his due diligence and research on all these candidates that will be interviewing with the team. Another thing Mike Elias needs to look out for, and he said it, he's going to be a player. The Orioles will be a player in free agency, maybe not the top guys, but they need a few veterans to go out there every single day, right? Something that stands out as a catcher.
Exactly. So, maybe a veteran catcher is on the list. I mean, it was the Orioles non-tendered Caleb Joseph, as we know. They still could talk to him. He still could be back. But they're a little thin at catching. Martin Cervenka is a guy they like a lot who played last year at Bowie, but he is not on the roster right now. He could be taken in the Rule 5 draft on Thursday, so we'll see. So maybe somebody on this list is of interest to Mike Elias. I'm sure he'll look very much at the analytics here, pitch framing, some of the stats that even the public doesn't have access to that the teams do to really know who's a catcher that can help lead a young pitching staff. You know, when you look at 2019, Sarah, a good guy behind the plate and some good defense behind that pitcher is so critical, because when you develop young pitchers, you don't want to make a lot of mistakes behind them. Sure. If they get an out and with a ground ball to short, you want to turn that out. You know, you don't want to make a mistake. That hurts in developing pitchers. So with young pitchers in the majors or minors, catching, defense, pretty important.
You're right. Dylan Bundy actually called in the Hot Stove Show with Rocco Bacco on 105.7 The Fan last week and said it's so important to have that veteran catcher, because you look at a guy like Caleb Joseph, who knew the majority of hitters in Major League Baseball, and it was so much easier to call a game with someone like that behind the plate. So it's something they're going to have to go after. Luckily, it's a little bit of a flooded market. A lot of free agent catchers out there. Exactly.
And the market will carry on past Las Vegas for sure, past the end of 2018. So some people have made the point, it's a good one, that player acquisition for the Orioles may be a little on the back burner here. As we said, they're still setting their front office. They haven't even hired a manager. All these things that are very critical to the future of the Orioles are going to happen over the next few weeks, and maybe at that point they start to add some player talent. Doesn't mean they can't along the way, but right now we know the Orioles aren't going to be in the playoffs in 2019, barring something incredible. So right now, it's just not as big a front burner item adding to the roster as it will be later.
Sure. Steve, fans aren't going to be happy that I'm bringing this up right now, but we do have to talk about the Rule 5 draft happening on Thursday. The Orioles will be active and very active with the first pick in the Rule 5 draft on Thursday. Listen, Mike Elias has found some gems. We talk about players from the Astros. He found Marwin Gonzalez back in 2011, and the Orioles found Joey Rickard prior to that. Do you find their first pick in the Rule 5 a crucial pick to help this team grow?
Well, I mean, we'll see how crucial it's going to be. I mean, the Rule 5, you tend to get a player that helps you at the margins of the roster. You're probably not going to get a regular. You're probably not going to get an all-star. But when you have the absolute #1 pick, you can take anybody who's available.
Exactly.
So I'm sure they're scouring that list really well right now. And, I mean, Richie Martin is out there, who's a shortstop for Oakland, who hit really well at AA last year. He's a good defender. There's a pitcher that pitched for Houston that I think Elias was involved in drafting. I believe his name is Riley Farrell.
Okay.
So there are some people out there who he'll look at, I'm sure. And of all years, this is the year for the Orioles to make a pick. It used to frustrate fans when they made a Rule 5 pick when they were a contending team, because how could you keep this guy on the roster all year? But the Orioles are the land of opportunity right now, Sarah, for young talent, Rule 5 and otherwise. So we could see, I mean, they have 2 spots open on the 40-man right now, so there might even be 2 picks on Thursday.
I know, it's kind of crazy to think about. Rocco Bacco, come join the set for a second. I see you over there.
Photobomb.
Get in here, Rock. We're live at Mandalay Bay. So much to talk about, so much to look forward to with this Orioles team. Will they hire a manager in the next few days or even weeks? Rock has no idea, clearly. No, we don't know yet. A lot to come our way. Will they
just got in his workout for the day here, I think.
Will they be able to sign a free agent catcher? And what's to come of this Rule 5 draft? We're going to keep you covered right here on MASN All Access. For Steve Melewski, thank you. I'm Sara Perlman. He's Rock Ubaka, who just joined the set. We'll be back in just a few.